Chase, thanks for joining us. How worn out are you?
Ready to get back. I'll be peeling out of here, headed back to Tuscaloosa in the next couple hours, and looking forward to getting home after being here about 5 days. Pretty long trip.
I talked to some people. I sent Brandon and Zach down there earlier this week, and I've talked to some other people that are down there. Said, it gets crazier every year. Someone told me, said this was more people, more media, more scouts, more coaches. Said it was just unbelievable. Was that your take?
I didn't think it was all that much bigger than it's been in the past, but it's definitely grown. There's no doubt about that. I didn't see huge growth over last year, but if you go back 5 years, 10 years, yeah, it's grown a ton.
Let's talk about some of your evaluations, particularly with the Alabama guys that were down there. Of course, Coach Saban made his annual appearance on Wednesday. 4 Alabama players in the game. Of course, Dion Hamilton not able to go because of the knee injury rehab, but he's down there visiting with players. Anthony Averett stopped by. But let's begin with Rashaan Evans, because he's a guy, you've watched him for 4 years. I've watched him for 4 years. He's got ability, particularly I think as a 3 technique on the next level. He's strong at the point of attack. He's long-armed. He's got some athletic ability, and I understand that he showed up pretty well this week. What's your evaluation of Rashaan Evans watching this week, and where do you think he'll come out in the draft?
I do think he showed up pretty well. He's a guy with a lot of athleticism and didn't have the huge breakout year at Alabama that maybe some expected. He was but he was a solid player, and the offensive tackles down here, a lot of them are going to get picked. A lot of them are going to get drafted. Not all of them, but it's a pretty stout group, and for him to be able to come down and perform at a high level against guys that are going to be in the mix with him as far as where they get selected, I thought he definitely made some money. A couple of the offensive tackles that could have even helped him more. One of them in particular from West Georgia didn't play. He got hurt. He withdrew with a knee injury. A kid named Harrison, who's maybe going to be a first-round pick. And so him sitting out took away an opportunity for all the defensive linemen, I thought. But nevertheless, I thought Hand had a good week.
Good deal, because, again, it's easy to forget that he was the number 1 rated high school player in the country when he came out of the, that Virginia, Washington, D.C. area 4 years ago. And as you said, had a good career at Alabama, never quite received or reached that superstar status, but I'd love to see him go on in the NFL and have a quality career. Levi Wallace, I mean, again, Nick Saban just loves to talk about Levi Wallace. Kind of an anomaly at Alabama where everybody, it seems, is a 4 or 5-star recruit. He's a former walk-on that became a starter on a national championship team. The bottom line with him, Chase, is he can cover. I know he still needs to get some weight on, but as you know, in the NFL, that's what it's all about. If you're going to be a cornerback in that league, you've got to be able to cover people, and he can. What has his work looked like this week there in Mobile?
I talked to a scout who really likes his length and the way he can use his length. I'm not sure off the top of my head what his measurement was for his arms, but he's got a long pair of arms, and that helps him in coverage. It allows him to kind of make up a step if he needs to, if he gets a little bit behind. I definitely think he's a straight corner. I don't think he's a nickel guy or a safety guy. He's just not built that way. Like you said, he does need to put some weight on. He's pretty narrow, but he can run. He's got instincts. He's a smart guy. And I think the arrow on him is definitely pointing up.
JK Scott, and he's a punter, man. And you know how it is with punters. Sometimes somebody will see a punter and say, yeah, he's good enough. We want to use a draft pick on him. A lot of other teams will just say, hey, we're never going to draft a punter. We'll sign one in free agency. He's got a big leg. He's pretty accurate. He also gives you the option of kicking off, and in a pinch, if your place kicker goes down for whatever reason, he can kick field goals. Do you think he is a draftable guy, or you think he'll wind up going the free agent route?
I do think he's draftable. That's different. It's not quite the same thing as predicting that he will be drafted, because as you said, it's a sticky situation for all these specialists when it comes to the NFL draft. A lot of clubs are more than fine with just free agents or whatnot, but you know, he was launching some punts here in Mobile this week, and not all of them. He had a shank or two, like all punters will. But when he got it up in the air, and particularly yesterday, I thought, the day before on Tuesday, there's a little bit of a breeze at his back, and when he got that spiral to turn over, guys were definitely backing up on the other end to field those things. He's gonna make some team a heck of a punter, whether he gets picked or not.
And Bradley Bozeman, Nick Saban likes big, tall, powerful centers. He stepped over there and in a couple years has been a really good player. I like him. I like his toughness. I think he's got a nasty streak. But he seems to be a fringe guy as far as getting drafted. Has Bozeman impressed people enough in Mobile this week, in your opinion, that someone will use a draft pick on him?
I think he's probably a third-day draft pick, toward the back half of the draft. Hard to say where. When you get to that late, anything can happen. But and I didn't necessarily think he helped or hurt himself this week. I don't think he had a bad week. I'm not sure that he necessarily stood out either. But I do, my understanding from the scouts that I've talked to is that he will be kind of a third-day guy, or should be kind of a third-day guy. And look, a lot of those guys end up making a lot of money and spending a lot of years in the NFL. It's just, for a lot of them, it's just about finding the right fit almost more than how early you get drafted. Because, look, if you're a fifth-round pick or a sixth-round pick, there's no guarantee you even make the team. You could get cut and not even be on the squad in the fall. And so once you get into that third day fit, for the player anyway, and I know it's hard to say this because of the money issue, I get it, but for the player, I think fit is maybe even more important than how high you get picked once you get into the back end of the draft, because by that point, no one's making a ton of money.
Chase Goodbread from NFL.com with us. He's been at the Senior Bowl all week, making his way back home to Tuscaloosa from Mobile today. Shaun Dion Hamilton getting an opportunity to visit with coaches and scouts and GMs and so forth. Of course, back-to-back seasons. He had his season end early with knee injuries. Great football player, leader, tough, hard-nosed. What's been the reaction to him as far as people visiting with him? Do you think he's been able to convince people that he's going to be 100% after, 2 knee injuries? And is he a guy that somebody will take a chance on that third day, maybe in draft?
Yeah, if you're Shaun Dion Hamilton, then the interview sessions down here is your whole game. It's your Super Bowl, because you got nothing else going on, obviously, physically. So huge for him to impress some teams in the interview process here at the Senior Bowl. And even more huge, I think, will be the medical reports, obviously. And I'm not sure if I would presume he'll be at the NFL Scouting Combine, even though that list has not officially been finalized yet. And presuming that he is, he'll go through some extensive medical examinations, like all of them do at the Combine. But what the clubs think of what they see on his medical report, that'll weigh pretty heavily.
Chase Goodbread with us from NFL.com. What did you make of Rashaan Evans' decision to say no to the Senior Bowl and head on down to Miami? Of course, he's with Drew Rosenhaus's agency, and go ahead and start working out for the Combine. Good move on his part, or do you think he should have went ahead and participated in Senior Bowl activities?
I don't think it hurt him at all. I really don't. And I saw a quote from him, and I can't remember. I'll paraphrase him. I can't remember what he said exactly, but it was something to the effect of, look, I've played a lot of football at Alabama, and I've put a lot of good tape down for scouts to look at the last few years. Should be enough. And he's absolutely right. There's more than enough on him against high-level competition in his years as a starter at Alabama to give scouts all the conviction they need without seeing them here.
A lot of good quarterbacks in Mobile this week. Baker Mayfield, Mason Rudolph, Mike White from Western Kentucky, Tanner Lee from Nebraska, Brandon Silvers from Troy has shown up. A couple of others, of course, Luke Falk there from Washington State. I know I left out a couple, but it all starts with a guy that some are saying could be the number 1 pick in the draft, and that's Josh Allen from Wyoming. Chase, I want to get your opinion, but I'm going to first give you my opinion. Just watching him some this year, yes, he's got the measurables. He's a big, strapping, strong-armed guy. But, watching him at Wyoming, and a lot of people, of course, want to compare him to Carson Wentz. And I know Carson Wentz played at a lower level, but he dominated in college. Carson Wentz dominated at North Dakota State. I don't see that from Josh Allen. Yeah, I know he looks the part, but I've watched him a couple times late on Saturday night, and I just wasn't that impressed. I mean, how do you – and it's not my job to evaluate these guys. It is your job to some degree. What do you think of Josh Allen, and do you think he is a guy that could translate the way Wentz has, or you think that there's more question marks surrounding him?
Well, there's definitely legitimate concern about his accuracy and about his production at the college level. 2 years ago at Wyoming, he was more productive than he was last year. Now, part of the reason for that is the offense around him got gutted from one year to the next. And so he was, in his defense, he was short on weapons around him this year. He didn't have as good an offensive line in front of him this year, and that can make it a lot tougher on any quarterback. That being said, he admitted on media day here that his accuracy has got a ways to go. He's trying to straighten it out with his footwork, and the progress he makes with his footwork between now and the combine will be huge for him.
Baker Mayfield, the height's an issue. People are calling him a system quarterback, but man, he's tough. He's got leadership skills. I know he can be a little Johnny Manziel-ish at times, but he can spin it. He can really spin it, Chase. I mean, I like him. What's your 2 cents worth on Baker Mayfield?
I like him too. I think he's going to be just fine. I think he's going to be an NFL starter. I don't see bust on him whatsoever. I think he's prolific, but like Allen, he's got a ways to go with his footwork as well. Now the difference is, when Josh Allen's footwork is messed up, the ball is going to sail, and it's going to be ugly. Mayfield, on the other hand, and this is a little bit like Manziel too, he can have bad footwork on a given throw and still put it on the numbers. But eventually the NFL coaches obviously are going to want to work that out of him and try to straighten his footwork out into something more consistent too. But yeah, I'm a Mayfield fan. I think he'll be fine.
Of course, another big name quarterback, Mason Rudolph, not able to participate because of an injury this week. What about Brandon Silvers at Troy? I understand he's caught the eye of some coaches and scouts. Seems to be able to put the ball into tight windows. He's athletic. What are you hearing on him?
Yeah, I had a chance to chat with him. I didn't talk to any scouts about him, so I don't have much of a read on the week that he had. Being, there's 110 guys down here. Right. But I did get a chance to catch up with him a couple days ago, and he was excited for sure for the opportunity and all those small school guys, whether it's Troy, whether it's Josh Allen from Wyoming, you name it. Those small school guys come down to the Senior Bowl with a serious chip on their shoulder most of the time because they've gone through their college years without getting the pub of a big-time player like a DJ Chark from LSU who's here, a Deshaun Hand, et cetera. They love to jump in there with the big-name guys and show they're just as good.
Yeah, and he's one to watch, I think. Final quarterback I'm going to ask you about is Luke Falk from Washington State because, he put up video game numbers at Washington State because of the system there with Mike Leach and but when you play the better teams, the better defenses, not so much. I just can never get a read on Leach quarterbacks because the numbers are going to be so strong. I don't know on him. Chase, what are you hearing? I mean, I would think he's draftable, but I'm thinking maybe 5th, 6th, 7th round. Oh, what about you?
He's got too many skills not to be drafted, in my opinion. So I most definitely think he'll get picked. But you're right that you can't get as an evaluator if you're scouting him, you can't get hoodwinked by the production at the college level, and it's easy to fall in love with it for sure. But there's a pretty lengthy list of guys who were crazy productive in college in that system and never did a thing in the NFL. So that to some extent you got to throw that out. Really, it's going to come down to physical tools with him and the mental side of making the transition from that air raid system to the NFL. It's not an easy thing to do. Some have had more success than others. And a lot of these systems aren't even the pure air raid anymore. Now that's broken off, and it's like they're cousins of the air raid who, like, for instance, Baker Mayfield and that Oklahoma offense is an air raid cousin. Jared Goff, who's now the quarterback of the Rams, the thing he ran at Cal was called the Bear Raid, and that's a little bit different, had some similarities. So it's almost like the flu, that spread offense, Gary Harris. It's just got all kinds of strains now,
Yeah, that's a good description. All right, wrapping up with Chase Goodbread from NFL.com. The news last night breaking, I'm interested in your opinion on Dan Enos leaving Michigan after just a couple of weeks, where he was going to be probably the wide receivers coach, to come to Alabama as the associate head coach and quarterbacks coach. We know, even though it has not officially been announced, our expectation is that Mike Locksley will be the play caller and the offensive coordinator in 2018. But also, I think most of us assumed he would coach quarterbacks. I mean, Coach Saban, the bottom line is he wants to get the best staff he can get. Any concern in your mind, though, that Locksley, who no doubt in my mind wanted to coach the quarterbacks, has suddenly got Enos on the same staff? Kind of where I'm going with this. I'm hearing some rumblings that Locksley may not be thrilled about this. What's your take on it?
I don't think it's anything too alarming. I think it's in some ways it's a similar setup to what it is with Dable, because I think Dable is obviously a pro-style guy. I think Locksley had a lot to do with the RPO package for Alabama. And I think you're looking at the same setup probably for 2018, where, Locksley will have a lot to do with that RPO package, and you'll have a guy like Enos who's, going to be, he's more of a pro-style guy. So I look at it as, to some extent, a continuation of 2017.
Finally, with Nick Saban, and I want to preface my comments by saying, listen, the guy works 100% all the time. When he gets to the point where he can't do that, I think that's when he'll step away. So I don't want to infer that he has not been busting his hump. But watching his reaction at the end of that national championship game, seeing how much satisfaction he got out of that team achieving what it did, I do think it's important him to try to remain undefeated against these former assistants for as long as he can. All the staff turnover, the way he reacted at the national championship celebration last week, I think he's getting a second wind, so to speak, Chase. I think he's revitalized. Again, not that he wasn't working hard to begin with, but I'm looking at Nick Saban, and I'm getting the impression that now I think officially he's at 218 wins, probably 222 or 3 without the vacancies from that first season. But I'm thinking he believes 300 wins are reachable. I'm thinking he certainly believes a few more national championships are in his grasp, and that he's fired up and ready to go. Do you get that impression?
The impression I get is that if you're in Nick Saban's situation and you have this thing rolling so well, it almost becomes, where is the right time and point to get off this bus that's on such a glorious ride? I mean, you're coming off another national championship. I guess it's 5 in the last 9 years, which is absolutely ridiculous. The legacy's cemented without question, no matter what happens from this point forward. If I'm Nick Saban, it's difficult. It's real hard to call it a career because of there's so much momentum. And he's not a guy that really believes in momentum. He's a guy that believes you make your own momentum every day. I get that, but let's be honest. This thing's a machine right now, and it's going to be hard to stop. It's going to be impossible to stop as long as he decides to keep it going.
Indeed it is. All right, Chase Goodbread, great stuff as always from you. Appreciate you joining the program. I know you're worn out, looking forward to getting back here to Tuscaloosa and seeing the family. Folks, you can follow Chase on Twitter at Chase Goodbread, and, of course, obviously read him at NFL.com. Thanks so much, Chase.
All right, Gary, thanks.